Welcome back to another explainer. We're jumping right in today because we have a pretty wild one for you. We are going to meticulously unpack 3 real, highly disturbing motel encounters. I'm so glad you're here because understanding the anatomy of these situations, it might literally change the way you travel forever.
Okay, let's dive into this. We've absolutely all been there, right? You're driving late at night, your eyes are getting super heavy, and you spot that flickering neon sign in the distance. And you just think, man, I just need a place to crash for a few hours. Why drop over $100 when I can just grab a cheap room? But I want you to keep one question in the back of your mind throughout this explainer. What is the true cost of a cheap motel room? Because sometimes you pay with your peace of mind, and sometimes you pay with your safety.
Case Study 1, The Intruder in Xenia. The scene starts exactly how I just described. A heavily fatigued driver passing through Ohio pulls into a rundown motel, literally just looking for a place to crash.
He walks into this hot, buzzing front office. The older guy behind the desk barely even looks up from his newspaper and just grunts a single number, 65. $65 for the night. Now, obviously, that's a suspiciously low price point, right? And as our traveler quickly found out, basic customer service, and way more importantly, basic security, were absolutely not included in that $65 fee. The clerk flat out refused a request for a corner room and just handed over an old-fashioned metal key.
What's really wild here is the sheer number of red flags that were completely ignored just to get a cheap night's sleep. First, you have the hostile clerk. Then the key came on a completely blank key ring. No electronic key cards here. When he stepped inside, the room smelled intensely like this gross mix of cotton and vomit. Just awful. But the biggest warning sign? The door lock was incredibly difficult to turn. After shimmying it for like 30 seconds and practically popping a blood vessel, the traveler managed to get it stuck in a way where the door wouldn't even open from the inside. He just kind of figured, well, that means I'm safe from the outside too.
So he lays down, but pretty soon after, there's a loud thump at the window. A man is standing outside, claiming he's hurt, begging to be let in. Now, this brilliantly illustrates the immediate psychological conflict in these situations. Your initial human reaction is to think, oh, this is just an injured man needing help. But the terrifying reality is far more sinister. It is a deliberate trap to get inside. Our traveler realizes the guy is acting, yells at him to go to the front desk, and eventually, the man leaves. The traveler just closes the curtains and falls into this troubled half-sleep. Then, the traveler starts having this nightmare where these clicking sounds completely take over his dream. Suddenly, he wakes up. The room is freezing cold. His blanket has been ripped off of him. He looks to the foot of the bed and sees a tall, masked figure just towering over him in the pitch black. The intruder shushes him, promises not to hurt him if he stays quiet, and asks this absolutely chilling question: "Where's your wallet?" After digging through the traveler's jeans on the floor, the masked man simply walks out. The lock had completely failed. The traveler literally had to sleep in his car after the police and the front desk proved to be completely useless.
Case Study 2, The Rattling Door. This ordeal involves a father and his teenage daughter who were basically forced to stay at a heavily wooded, super isolated motel.
They were actually traveling with a truck full of donated clothes to help families affected by a recent flood. The whole vibe is set immediately by the motel's management. The wife is sweet, sure, but the husband is a totally different story. The narrator notes that he looked like he was pulled straight from a serial killer movie. His wrinkles seemed to just melt on his face, and he had these deep, dark rings around his eyes. He never spoke, never smiled. But the craziest part, when the dad and daughter tried to leave a bag of kids' clothes with him to donate to the neighboring trailer park, his eyes widened in absolute terror. He vehemently shook his head and completely refused to go anywhere near the place.
Despite feeling totally uneasy, they try to get some rest. But at exactly 2:17 a.m., the tension snaps. The daughter is wide awake, just reading a book on her phone because her dad's snoring woke her up. The room is dark, her body is facing the door, and that heavy, creepy atmosphere of the isolated motel is about to break.
At first, she hears cars speeding up and down the driveway. And again, we see the brain desperately trying to rationalize fear, right? Thinking, oh, it's just guys goofing off in cars. But that logic instantly evaporates. A bright blue light suddenly shines through the top and bottom cracks of their door, followed by these silent, undecipherable whispers from the other side. Her heart is completely in her throat. Her hands are visibly shaking. And then the door handle violently begins to rattle. The rattling stops, the light vanishes, and there is dead silence for 3 agonizing minutes. Finally, she wakes her dad up and frantically explains the whole thing. He actually chuckles at first, thinking she's just spooked.
and tells her he was awake earlier because he heard scratching sounds in the walls. But then, he just freezes. He puts his finger to his lips and whispers, "Shh, do you hear that?" The room goes totally silent until they both hear brief, deliberate scratching sounds. But they aren't coming from the walls anymore. They are coming directly from inside their wooden bed frame.
They didn't pack a single thing. They didn't stop to check out. Step 1, they shot straight out of that bed. Step 2, they dropped the room key right on the mattress. Step 3, they silently sneaked out into the pitch black night toward their truck. And step 4, by 2:32 a.m., literally just 15 minutes after the ordeal began, they had completely fled the property, vowing to absolutely never return.
Case study 3, under the bed. Honestly, this is arguably the most unsettling of the 3 because it deals with the absolute unknown. After a massive blowout fight with his girlfriend, our narrator decides to just go find his own room for the night.
Once again, the lure of the cheap room comes into play. Instead of paying $150 for a standard hotel just to cool off, he finds a roadside motel for just $50 a night. As he's walking to his room, he passes the adjacent one. The door is wide open, and inside there is absolutely no one, just the eerie, solid blue glow of a television screen lighting up the dark space. He ignores it, goes into his own room, and just starts playing games on his phone.
Let's move to and see how this builds into pure panic. He rents the room around 10 p.m. By 10:30, he starts hearing these incredibly muffled noises from the room next door. You know, the open one with the blue TV. He can't really tell if it's a couple fighting or someone in serious distress. By 11 p.m., those muffled noises escalate into aggressive, deliberate pounding right on the shared wall. Feeling a bit bold, at 11:15 p.m., he actually decides to walk next door to confront whoever is making all that noise.
He knocks on the open door. Nothing. No answer. So he cautiously steps inside. The room is completely empty. The bathroom light is off. He walks over to the TV that's emitting that solid blue glow just to see what's playing. It's totally blank. But stuck right in the center of the glass is a single sticky note. He peels it off and reads 5 terrifying words. "Check under the bed."
He drops the note instantly. Flight mode activated. He sprints back to his room, slams the door, and double locks it with a chain. He gets his girlfriend on speakerphone in an absolute panic, and right as he's explaining the sticky note to her, boom, the banging on the shared wall starts up again. She hears it clear as day over the phone and screams at him to run. He books it to the front desk, demands they kick the person out of the room next door, and demands his $50 refund. But here's the massive twist to this whole story. The front desk clerk looks at him, totally confused, and drops this chilling fact. There was no one staying on either side of his room. The clerk grabs a master key, walks back with the narrator, and opens the adjacent door. The blue TV is now completely off. The room is pitch black. The clerk looks under the bed, nothing. And that sticky note the narrator had dropped on the floor, it had completely vanished. Ultimate travel safety lessons. These stories are incredibly gripping, but as an explainer, we really need to extract the core data here. Let's look at the actual safety takeaways we can draw from these experiences. So the crucial point is that ignoring specific warning signs led directly to danger in all our case studies. Broken door locks don't mean, oh, just make it work. They mean your safety is physically compromised and your action must be to get a new room or leave immediately. Hostile or overly eerie staff? That's not just bad customer service. It means you have zero lifeline if an actual emergency happens. And unexplained noises or pounding, as we clearly saw in Xenia in that weird blue TV room, it is very often a lure or a trap. Your action should never ever to go investigate a dark, strange room by yourself.
Which really brings us to the core thesis of all 3 of these events. Your intuition is your strongest security system, period. In every single story we covered today, the victim's logic desperately tried to override their basic survival instinct. Oh, it's just guys goofing off. It's just a finicky lock. It's just a weird smell. Guys, if a place feels profoundly unsafe, if it smells like vomit, or if the manager makes your skin crawl, saving $50 is mathematically and logically never worth the risk to your life.
What makes these stories really stick with us, though, is the lingering terror of the unknown. We know the Xenia intruder was just after a wallet, but think about the other 2. What was truly causing those scratches from inside the bed frame at 2:17 in the morning? Who turned off that blue TV screen, picked up the sticky note, and vanished into thin air while our guy was running to the front desk? The answers to those questions are exactly what makes cheap, isolated roadside motels so inherently unnerving. You are literally sharing thin walls with complete strangers, separated only by a few dollars in a flimsy piece of metal. So I'm going to leave you with this final thought for your next road trip.
Next time you pull over, exhausted, and check into a cheap motel, will you remember to check the locks? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Stay safe out there, and never ignore those red flags.